Assalamualaikum class. So this is part 3 of carbohydrates, and inshallah we're going to finish carbohydrate in this class. In this lecture we will be discussing about the glycoconjugates, proteoglycans, glycoproteins and glycolipids. So we are going to discuss some of their common examples and some main things about their structure, and we will also learn how and why carbohydrates can also serve as important information molecules and therefore why they are called as the sugar code. Okay, now we have glycoconjugates, which are proteoglycans, glycoproteins, and glycolipids. Now, in addition to their important roles as stored fuels in the form of starch, glycogen, and dextrin, and as a structural material like in the form of cellulose, chitin, and peptidoglycan, polysaccharides and oligosaccharides are also information carriers. They serve as a destination label for some proteins and as a mediators of specific cell-cell interaction and interaction between cells and the extracellular matrix. Specific carbohydrate containing molecule act in cell to cell recognition and adhesion, cell migration during development, blood clotting, and in the immune response as well, and during wound healing, which are just few of the roles that they play. In most of these cases, the information carbohydrate is covalently joined to a protein or a lipid molecule to form a glycoconjugate, which is biologically active molecule. Proteoglycans are macromolecules of the cell surface or extracellular matrix in which one or more glycosaminoglycan chain are joined covalently to a membrane protein or a secreted protein. The glycosaminoglycan moiety commonly forms the greater part of the peptidoglycan molecule by mass, and it dominates the structure, and it is often the main site of biological activity. In many cases, the biological activity is due to multiple binding sites, which are rich in opportunity for hydrogen bonding and electrostatic interaction with other proteins of the cell surface or the extracellular matrix. Proteoglycans are major component of the connective tissue as well, such as cartilage, in which there are many non-covalent interaction with other proteoglycan proteins and glycoaminoglycans, which provide strength and resistance. Glycoproteins have one or several oligosaccharides for varying complexity, which is joined with the help of a covalent bond to a protein molecule. They are found on the outer surface of the plasma membrane, in the extracellular matrix, and also in the blood. Now, inside the cell, they are found in specific organelles such as Golgi complexes, secretory granules, and lysosomes. The oligosaccharide portion of the glycoproteins are less monotomous than the glycosaminoglycan chain of the proteoglycan. They are rich in information, forming high specific sites for recognition and high affinity binding by the other proteins. These glycolipids are membrane lipid in which the hydrophilic head groups are oligosaccharides, which are in glycoprotein, and they act as specific sites for recognition of the carbohydrate binding proteins. We have the proteoglycans. Like mammalian cells can produce at least 30 different types of molecules that are the members of proteoglycan superfamily. These molecules act as tissue organizers. They influence the development of specialized tissue. They mediate the activities of various growth factors and regulate the extracellular assembly of the collagen fibers as well. The basic proteoglycan unit consists of a core protein which is covalently linked with glycosaminoglycan. Now, for example, the sheet-like extracellular matrix, which is also called the basal lamella, it separates the organized groups of the cells containing a family of core proteins, each with several covalently linked molecules which are known as the heparin sulfate chains. Now, this heparin sulfate is structurally similar to the heparin, but it has a lower density of the sulfate esters. Now, the point of attachment is commonly a serine residue to which the glucose aminoglycan is joined through that's called a trisaccharide bridge. Now, the serine residue is generally in the sequence of serine, linked with the glycine, linked with any amino acid, and then again linked with the glycine residue. Now, although not every protein with this sequence has a attached glycosaminoglycan, many proteoglycans are secreted into the extracellular matrix, but some are integral membrane proteins. For example, we have this example of syndican core protein. It has a transmembrane domain and an extracellular domain bearing three chains of this heparin sulfate and two of the chondroitin sulfate. Now, each is attached to a serine residue, as you can see, and there are at least four members of this protein family of syndican protein family in mammal, and another family of the core protein is the glypicans. They have six members. Now, these proteins are attached to the membrane by a lipid anchor, and a derivative of the membrane lipid, phosphatidylinositol. The heparin sulfate moieties in the proteoglycans bind a variety of extracellular ligands, and therefore they modulate the ligands interaction with specific receptors on the surface of the cell. Now, if we look at the detailed examination of the, if we do a detailed examination of the glycan moiety of the proteoglycan, it shows that a sequence heterogeneity that is not random, and there are some domains, typically 3 to 8 disaccharide long units, differ from the neighboring domain in sequence and its ability to bind to specific type of proteins. Here is a schematic diagram of integral membrane protein that I told you about. It's syndican. That's a core protein of the plasma membrane, as I told you earlier. The amino terminal domain on the extracellular surface of the membrane is covalently linked or attached by a trisaccharide linker, such as like you can see here in figure B, and to three heparin sulfate chains and two chondroitin sulfate chains. Now, some core proteins like this syndican protein shown here are anchored by a single transmembrane helix. Others, like glypicans, they are linked with the help of covalently, they are linked with the membrane of the glycolipids. Now, in a third class of core protein, the protein is released into the extracellular space where it forms a part of the basement membrane. In the right side of this slide, you can see that along a heparin sulfate chain rich in sulfated sugar, there is the S domain, which is green in color. Now, this S domain, which is green, alternate with the regions which are like chiefly unmodified, they have chiefly unmodified residues of N-acetyl glucosamine, which are abbreviated here as GLC, NAC, and glucuronic acid, which is abbreviated here as GLCA. And there is the N domain, which is gray in color. Now, one of the S domain is shown in more detail, and this is actually revealing a high density of modified residues of glucuronic acid with the sulfate ester at carbon number 6 and iduronic acid, which is abbreviated as IDOA, with a sulfate ester at carbon number 2. The exact pattern of sulfation in the S domain differs among proteoglycans. Given all the possible modification of the N-acetylglucosamine and iduronic acid, which is IDOA dimer here, there are at least 32 different disaccharide units which are possible. Now, in this diagram, you can see that as I told you earlier, that the S domain, which was like green in color, and it's shown here too, it binds specifically to extracellular proteins and signaling molecules to alter their activities. The change in the activity may result from a conformational change in the protein that is like induced by the binding, or it may be due to the ability of the adjacent domains of the heparin sulfate to bind to different proteins, bringing them in a close proximity and enhancing protein-protein interaction. So this is seen in the part B of this figure on the left side. A third general mechanism of action is that the binding of the extracellular signal molecules, which may be growth factors, for example, to the heparin sulfate, increases their local concentration and enhances their interaction with growth factor receptors in the cell surface. In this case, as you can see in the figure number C on the left side of the slide, that the heparin sulfate is acting as a co-receptor. Now, some proteoglycan can form proteoglycan aggregates, enormous supramolecule assemblies of many core proteins, all bound to a single molecule of the hyaluronate, which is hyaluronic acid. Now, when 100 or more of these like decorated core proteins bind a single extended molecules of hyaluronate, as you can see in the figure on the right side of the slide, which actually shows proteoglycan aggregate of the extracellular matrix. Now, one very long molecule of hyaluronic acid is associated non-covalently with about 100 molecules of the core protein aggrecan. Now, each aggrecan molecule contains more covalently bound chondroitin sulfate and keratin sulfate chains. Now, linked proteins situated at the junction between each core protein and the hyaluronate backbone mediate the core protein hyaluronate interaction. Now, the resulting proteoglycan aggregate and its associated water of hydration occupies a volume about equal to that of a almost a size of a bacterial cell. Now, the aggrecan interacts strongly with the collagen in the extracellular matrix of the cartilage, contributing to the development and tensile strength of these connective tissue. Interwoven with these enormous extracellular proteoglycans are fibrous matrix proteins such as collagen, elastin, and fibronectin, forming a cross-linked meshwork that gives the whole extracellular matrix strength and tensile strength and resistance. Now, some of these proteins are multi-adhesive, and a single protein having binding site for several different matrix proteins or matrix macromolecules. Fibronectin, for example, has separate domain that binds fibrin, heparin sulfate, collagen, and a family of the plasma membrane protein called the integrins that mediates signaling between the cell interior and the extracellular matrix. Now, many of the proteins secreted by the eukaryotic cells are glycoproteins, including most of the proteins of the our blood. Now, for example, we have our antibodies or immunoglobulins and certain hormones such as follicle stimulating hormone (FSH), luteinizing hormone, and thyroid stimulating hormones. They are all glycoproteins. Many milk proteins like we have lactalbumin, that's a milk protein, and some of the proteins secreted by the pancreas, they are all glycosylated and are more and along with that most of the proteins which are present within the lysosomes, they are also like glycosylated and therefore they are also due to the carbohydrates. Now, the biological advantages of adding oligosaccharide to proteins are not like completely understood. The very hydrophilic cluster of the carbohydrate altered the polarity and solubility of the protein with which they are like conjugated. Oligosaccharide chains that are attached to newly synthesized proteins in the endoplasmic reticulum and like in the Golgi complex may also influence the sequence of the polypeptide folding event that determine the tertiary structure of proteins. Now, you also know about steric interactions. Now, steric interaction between the peptides and oligosaccharides may produce one fold route and favor another. When numerous negatively charged oligosaccharide chains are like clustered in a single region of the protein, the charge repulsion among them favor the formation of a extended rod-like structure in that region. The bulkiness and the negative charge of the oligosaccharide chains also produces some proteins from the protects some protein from the attack of the proteolytic enzymes. Beyond these global physical effects on the protein structure, there are also some like more specific biological effect of the oligosaccharide chains in the glycoproteins. Here you can see, first of all, in the first diagram, the interaction between the cells and the extracellular matrix. Now you see the association between the cells and the proteoglycans of the extracellular matrix is mediated by a membrane protein, which is, I told you, it is integrin protein, and by a like an extracellular protein like fibronectin in this example, with binding sites for both integrin and the proteoglycan molecule. And also note that the close association of the collagen fiber and the fibronectin and the protoglycan, it's also visible here. Now on the right side of your slide, you see oligosaccharide linkage in the glycoproteins. You see you see that a O-linked oligosaccharide have a glycosidic bond to the hydroxyl group of the serine, or like it can also be a threonine residue, which is like shaded pink, and illustrated here with a N-acetylglucosamine as the sugar, which is like abbreviated as GALNAC at the reducing end of the oligosaccharide. One simple chain and one complex chain are shown here. In the B part, you see an N-linked oligosaccharides, and they have like an N-glycosyl bond to the amide nitrogen of the asparagine residue, which is shaded green, and it is illustrated here with the help of N-acetylglucosamine as the terminal sugar. Now, three common types of oligosaccharide chains that are N-linked in glycoprotein are shown here. And a complete description of the structure requires like specification of the position and the stereochemistry of each of these glycosidic linkage. Glycolipids and the lipopolysaccharides that I am discussing right now, they are membrane components. Now, the glycoproteins are not the only cellular component that bear the complex oligosaccharide chain. Some lipids, like two, have covalently linked oligosaccharides. We have like gangliosides. They are membrane lipids of eukaryotic cells in which the polar head group, the part of the lipid that forms the outer surface of the membrane, is a complex oligosaccharide containing sialic acid and other monosaccharide residues. Some of the oligosaccharide moieties of the gangliosides, such as those that determine the human blood group, they are identical with those found in certain glycoproteins, which therefore also contribute to blood group type determination. And like the oligosaccharides, moieties of the glycoprotein, those of the membrane lipids are generally, or like we can say, perhaps always found on the outer surface of the plasma membrane. Here we have an example of bacterial lipopolysaccharide. On the left side, you see a schematic diagram of the lipopolysaccharide of the outer membrane of a bacterium Salmonella species. And you can see that it has some chemical complexity. You don't have to like remember that. You just have to remember that there are six fatty acids in the lipid A portion of the molecule, and different bacterial species have like different lipopolysaccharide structures, but they have in common a lipid region, which is lipid a core oligosaccharide and a O-specific chain, which is the principal determinant of the serotype, which is actually the immunological reactivity of that bacteria, of that bacterium. The outer membrane of the gram-negative bacteria, for example, we have here this example. We can give the example of Salmonella, and for example, E. coli contains so many lipopolysaccharide molecules that the cell surface is virtually covered with the O-specific chain. On the right side, you see the stick structure of the lipopolysaccharide of E. coli as it is visible through a transparent surface contour model of the molecule. The position of the six fatty acyl chain was not defined in the crystallographic study, so it's actually not shown here. The carbohydrates can also act as information molecule, and therefore we use the term of sugar code for them. Glycobiology, which is like the study of the structure and function of the glycoconjugate, is one of the most active and exciting areas of biochemistry and cell biology. As it is becoming increasingly clear that cells are specific oligosaccharides to encode important information about intracellular targeting of proteins, cell-to-cell interaction, tissue development, and like extracellular signals. Now we are going to discuss just few examples which are going to show the diversity of the structure and range of the biological activity of the glycoconjugates. There are many improved methods for the analysis of oligosaccharides and polysaccharide structures that have shown that there is a remarkable complexity and diversity in the oligosaccharides of the glycoproteins and glycolipids. Now, you can look at the oligosaccharide chain in this figure, typical of those found in many of the glycoproteins. Now, the most complex of those shown contain like 14 monosaccharide residues of like four different kinds. Like variously, they are linked with the help of 1 to 2, 1 to 3, 1 to 4, 1 6, 2 3, and 2 6 bond, and some with the different configurations such as beta configuration. Now, branch structures are not found in the nucleic acid or proteins are commonly found in the oligosaccharides, with the reasonable assumption that 20 different monosaccharide subunits are available for the construction of oligosaccharides. We can calculate that about 1.4 into 10 raised to 15 different hexameric oligosaccharides are like possible, and this compares with the 6.4 10 raised to 7 or 20 raised to 6 different hexapeptides possible with the common 20 amino acids, and 4 raised to 6 different hexanucleotide with the 4 nucleotide subunit. Now, if we also allow the variation in the oligosaccharides resulting from sulfation of one or more residues, the number of possible oligosaccharide increases by by two orders of magnitude. Oligosaccharides are enormously rich in structural information, not merely revealing, but for surprising in nucleic acid. For like it's very large as compared to nucleic acid in the density of information contained in a molecule of a very small or modest size. Now, each of the oligosaccharides represented in this figure represent a unique three-dimensional phase, a word in the a word which can be used as the sugar code, and this is readable by the proteins that actually interact with that. We have an example of lectin, which is found in all the organisms, and it's a protein that binds carbohydrate with high affinity and specificity. Lectins serve a wide variety of cell-to-cell recognition, signaling, and adhesion processes, and in intracellular targeting of newly synthesized proteins. Now, in the laboratory, purified lectins are actually used for as a reagent for detecting and separating glycoproteins with different oligosaccharide moieties. We are just going to discuss few roles that the lectins play in our within our mammalian cell. Now we have some peptide hormones that circulate in the blood, and they have oligosaccharide moieties that strongly influence their circulatory half-life. We have, for example, luteinizing hormone, and we also have an example of thyrotropin hormone. Okay, some peptide hormones they are polypeptide hormones produced in the adrenal cortex, and they have a N-linked oligosaccharide that ends with the disaccharide, which is recognized by this protein lectin, which is actually the receptor of the hepatocytes. Now, the receptor hormone interaction mediates the uptake and destruction of the luteinizing hormone and thyrotropin, reducing their concentration in the blood. Thus, the blood levels of these hormones undergo a periodic rise due to the secretion of by the adrenal cortex and fall due to the destruction by the hepatocytes. On the left side of this slide, you see the residue of N-acetyluramic acid, which is also called as sialic acid, and it is situated at the end of the oligosaccharide chains of many of the plasma glycoproteins. And these glycoproteins protect those proteins from the uptake and degradation in the liver. Now, the plasma membrane of the hepatocytes, they have lectin molecules that specifically bind oligosaccharide chains with the galactose residues no longer therefore protected by a terminal N-acetyluramic acid residue. Now, several animal viruses, including the influenza virus, attach to their host cells through interaction with oligosaccharide displayed on the host cell surface. The lectin of the influenza virus, which is the HA protein, it is essential for the viral entry and its infection. Now, after initial binding of the virus to N-acetyluramic acid or a sialic acid containing oligosaccharide on the host surface, a viral enzyme which actually destroys this N-acetyluramic acid or salic acid, which is also called neuraminidase. This enzyme that removes the N-acetyluramic acid residue, removes the terminal sialic acid residue, like, and then this triggers the entry of the virus into the cell. Inhibitors of these enzymes are used clinically in the treatment of influenza. Lectin on the surface of the herpes simplex virus, which is HS1 and HS2, it binds specifically to the heparin sulfate on the cell surface as a first step in the infection cycle. The infection requires precisely the right pattern of the sulfation on this polymer. Then we have another example of selectins, which are family of the plasma membrane lectins. They are also lectin in nature that mediate cell-to-cell recognition and adhesion in a wide range of cellular processes. One such process is the movement of the immune cells, which are T lymphocytes, through the capillary walls from the blood to the tissues at the site of infection and inflammation. Now, at an infection site, P-selectin on the surface of the capillary endothelial cells interact with a specific oligosaccharide of the glycoprotein of the circulating T cells. This interaction slows the T cells as they adhere to and they roll along the endothelial lining of the capillaries. A second interaction between the integrin molecule in the T cell's plasma membrane and the adhesion protein on the endothelial cell surface now stops the T cells and allow it to move through the capillary wall into the infected tissues to initiate the immune uh, response or the attack. Now, two other selectins participate in this lymphocyte homing. E-selectin on the endothelial cells and L-selectin on the T cells, and bind the cognate oligosaccharide on the T cells and the endothelial cells respectively. Now, the role of the lectin ligand interaction in the lymphocyte movement on the site of the infection or injury is that T lymphocyte circulating through a capillary is slowed by the transient interaction between the P-selectin molecule in the plasma membrane of the capillary endothelial cells and glycoprotein ligand for the P-selectin on the T cell surface. And as it interacts with the P-selectin molecules, the T cell rolls along the capillary surface, as you can see on the right side of this figure. And near a site of inflammation, stronger interaction between the integrin and the capillary surface and its ligand in the T cell surface lead to a tight adhesion. The T cell stops rolling, and under the influence of the signal sent out from the site of inflammation, it begins extravasation, which means that it escapes through the capillary wall as it moves toward the site of inflammation. So after completing the a very basic introduction about the carbohydrates, about the monosaccharides, oligosaccharides, polysaccharides, a little information that I gave you about the glycoconjugates and how it acts as a information molecule or the sugar code, and having the an understanding about the presence of different oligosaccharides. Here is the summary of the carbohydrate that we have done so far. So, polysaccharides, which are also called glycans, they serve as stored fuel and they are structural component of the cell walls and the extracellular matrix. There were, as I told you, two classes of the polysaccharides. We had homopolysaccharides and heteropolysaccharides. Homopolysaccharides such as starch and glycogen are stored fuels in the plants and animals and also in the bacterial cells, and they consist of D-glucose which were linked together, and all the three contain some branches. Homopolysaccharides such as cellulose, chitin, and dextrin, they have a structural role to play, and they fold into three dimensions. The chair form of the pyranose ring is essentially rigid, so the conformation of the polymer is determined by rotation about the bond to the oxygen and the anomeric carbon. Starch and glycogen that we discussed, they form helical structure with the interchain hydrogen bonding. Cellulose and chitin form long straight chains that interact with the neighboring strands. In the series of the proteoglycans and glycoconjugates, which are core proteins, they are attached covalently to one another, or more glycans, such as I told you the example of heparin sulfate and chondroitin sulfate or keratin sulfate, right? The glycan is the greater portion, as I told you, by mass of the molecule, bound to the outside of the plasma membrane by a transmembrane peptide, or they are covalently attached with the lipid. Proteoglycans provide point of adhesion, recognition, and information transfer between the cells, or between the cells and the extracellular matrix. Glycoproteins contain covalently linked oligosaccharides that are like smaller but more structurally complex, and therefore they are more rich in information than the as compared to the glycosaminoglycans. Glycolipids and lipopolysaccharides are common components of the plasma membrane with like covalently attached oligosaccharide chains exposed on the cell's outer surface. Monosaccharide can be assembled into an almost limitless variety of oligosaccharides, which differ in the stereochemistry and position of the glycosidic bond, the type of orientation of the substituent group, and the number of the branches. Oligosaccharide at the end are far more information dense as compared to nucleic acids and proteins.